There's one little area, though, that we need to mention before we get to what we call the temple. Okay? And that is the stationary tabernacle. Okay? The stationary tabernacle. Is it called that? Is it called that anywhere in the Bible? No, I give it that name. Okay? But we find out after the children of Israel came into the promised land, in Joshua chapter 18 and verse 1, we see here that they set the tabernacle in Shiloh. Okay, and this is where it would stay for several years. And we'll look at that in a little bit. But when we look at this tonight, this is basically the same thing that they carried from place to place during their wanderings in the wilderness prior to the crossing of the Jordan. This is after Moses has passed away and they've crossed into the promised land. And as we look, well, I like to do this here. What do I do with that little flipper thing? There it is. Joshua 18:1, and the whole congregation of the children of Israel assembled together at Shiloh and set up the tabernacle of the congregation there. And the land was subdued before them. Okay, they'd come in, basically they'd claimed the promised land that the Lord had told them that they were going to have 40 years prior to this. Okay, you remember the event that basically took place that caused that 40-year delay? Okay, you remember how many spies they sent in? 12? How many came back saying, we got this? Two. Remember their names?
Caleb
and Joshua, right? The other 10, who were they? Nobody remembers their name, do we? Just no, they don't. We don't remember their names. Yeah, right. Yeah. So, but we always remember Caleb and Joshua, and they said, "Yeah, oh man, they got the grapes are this big, and that. But they're big people. So what? We look like grasshoppers." God said we can take them. Okay. As a matter of fact, there was another fellow that felt a lot like a grasshopper next to a giant sometime later, and he knew that he could take that giant as well because God had delivered him into his hand. But we see here that the land was subdued before them. It was their land to take. Okay? It was their land to take. If they would have done exactly what God said to do, it was theirs for the taking because He had promised them this. Do you think we ever have a situation in our life where God is leading us to do something and we fail to follow Him in faith and God has already made it happen in essence? All we have to do is step up by faith and take care of it. Okay? What was the old saying? And I don't know who said it. It might be a Shakespeare thing, but I have no idea. Faint heart never won fair lady. You ever hear that? You know, yeah, I don't know. She's too pretty. I don't want to ask her if she'd like to go to the movies or if she'd like to, you know, if I could, you know, talk to her. Yeah, but if you don't, what's she going to do? Say no? If she says no, then you know, right? But if God has laid something on our heart and He has told us to do it and it's in according to the Scripture, then we need to follow through with it by faith, believing that God is going to do what He says to do. Okay? I'm sure we've all missed out on great things in our lives because we failed to do so. Okay, the tabernacle in Shiloh becomes the first worship center in Israel. What do I mean by worship center? Let's think about where we just came from. See if anybody can read my mind. Just that part. The rest of it's scary, but just that part. Okay? What am I meaning by worship center? A location, right?
The center of worship.
Yeah, it's right there.
In the center of
This tabernacle's not moving around anymore, is it? So this becomes the first place where the tabernacle rests, and this will be the place that's identified as the worship center. Okay? In Shiloh. You can see where Shiloh is located. Jerusalem in here is about 20 miles north, a little east, a little northeast of Jerusalem. Okay? And up in this area is what we know as Shechem, or today it's Nablus. Okay, so this area here is where there is a settlement there now called, is it yet Shiloh? I can't remember now. But there is a modern town not too far from that location named after Shiloh. Okay, the tabernacle in Shiloh. Some historians believe that during the time it was there, it was a more solid, permanent structure. Okay, some people quote where Hannah, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, where Hannah was crying at the temple or at the tabernacle, and Eli was sitting by a post of the door. Okay, by a post. So now some of the Jewish history, the Talmud is what a lot of the Jews take their history from, record the fact that it was a more permanent structure at some point in time. Now, during the time of Hannah, as we'll get to, would have been in the later portion of the time that the tabernacle was in Shiloh. Okay? All right? Now, according to historians, the tabernacle was in Shiloh anywhere from 305, that should be 369 years. That's a typo. I got that backwards. Okay? Anywhere from 305 to 369 years. That's pretty stationary. Especially for the nearly 40 years prior to that, it was here, there, and everywhere, right? You never knew where they were. It's kind of like sometimes when you go to these places and you see these car dealers, they got these big tents out in these parking lots. Okay? If anybody's ever sold cars that way, or if anybody's ever bought a car that way, that's between you and them. I think I'd like to buy a car from somebody who's going to be there next time I have something wrong with it. I don't know. I'd like to be able to go back there. Well, there was this guy. He was in a tent, and he told me it was right there. It was, But the fact of the matter is, it had stayed in one location for this amount of time. So many generations had come to worship and sacrifice at this location. Okay? Shiloh means tranquil. Okay? In the Hebrew, it is pronounced Shiloh. Okay? Y'all remember hearing David say Shiloh, right? In Israel. Okay? Now the word Shiloh has reference to Jesus in Genesis chapter 49, verses 8 through 12. Okay? So if you'd like to look there with me for a moment. Genesis 49. Now the word in Genesis 49 for Shiloh is a little different than the word that we find when it's talking about the location. Okay? Because the definition of the word Shiloh means tranquil. But there is a city that is by that name. Okay? So it doesn't necessarily mean, like Philadelphia, they call it the city of brotherly love. Has anybody ever been there?
Yes.
Do you have any trouble finding brotherly love?
Yes.
Or almost any kind of love, right? Yeah. All right, so it's just become a name pretty much. It's just the name. So Shiloh, whether or not the city itself meant tranquil, it was a name that was used for a city. And it might have at its settlement, okay? But the word's a little different here in Genesis 49. It's the same, this comes from the same root word as the one here in Genesis 49, but it's just a little bit different, okay? And it says this in Genesis 49, verse 8. Judah, thou art he whom thy brethren shall praise. Thy hand shall be in the neck of thine enemies. Thy father's children shall bow down before thee. Judah is a lion's whelp from the prey, my son. Thou art gone up. He stooped down. He couched as a lion and as an old lion. Who shall rouse him up? The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor a lawgiver from between his feet until Shiloh come, and unto him shall the gathering of the people be. Binding his foal under the vine, and his ass's colt under the choice vine. He washed his garments in wine, and his clothes in the blood of grapes. His eyes shall be red with wine, and his teeth white with milk. Rather interesting description of Judah. What was the banner of Judah? What was their what was their mascot, for the lack of a better term? Anybody remember? Is a lion, right? So we see this all through this passage of Scripture in reference to a lion and Judah. What is one of the names that Jesus is called? The
Lion of the tribe of Judah.
Lion of the tribe of Judah, right? We see that he is made reference to in that respect. So it says here, and it says, the scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor a lawgiver from between his feet, until Shiloh come, and unto him shall be the gathering of the people be. Okay? I think he's going to be involved in a gathering, without a doubt. But you look on, it says, binding his foal under the vine, and his ass's colt under the choice vine, he washed his garments in wine, and his clothes in the blood of grapes. Anybody remember the picture of Jesus in the book of Revelation, where he comes riding on the white horse, and it says he has a vesture dipped in blood. Okay? The blood of the grapes, the grape juice is often made reference to as blood. So we see pictures of Jesus Christ in this term Shiloh. Now, what's the significance about where the tabernacle is placed in this? I'll be completely honest with you, I don't know how that ties in there. But it seems rather interesting. When the term Shiloh is used in Genesis chapter 49 to talk about the Messiah, and they wind up putting the tabernacle in a place called Shiloh, and what does the tabernacle point to?
Jesus.
Jesus. Every single thing in the tabernacle points to Jesus. Okay? So, as we look at this, we'll see some things that happen here. This is toward the end of the time that the tabernacle was in Shiloh. Okay? Hannah wept here before the door of the tabernacle. In Samuel 1:9, we know that she was crying. You remember the story, because she didn't have any children, right? And she wanted a child. She wanted to have a boy child. And Eli thought she was what?
Drunk.
Yeah, he thought she was drunk. And she's, hey, I'm not drunk. Can I tell you something? If anybody remembers the passage of Scripture there, anybody remember what Hannah was given to God at that time? As the word starts with a C. And it's something that somebody says every time you say, how are you doing? And they says, can't what? I can't complain, because nobody will listen anyway. How many times have you heard somebody say that? I can't complain, nobody will listen anyway. God will.
True.
Hannah was given a complaint. It's exactly what she told Eli. I'm giving my complaint to God. Now that doesn't mean she was being, okay, God, it's about time you started doing something. That's not what I'm talking about. But when we got something that's pressing on our heart, pressing on our spirit, who can we talk to about that? We talk to God about that. We can give him our complaint, if you will. All right? All right, Eli was the high priest during the time of Hannah and Samuel, as you'll look in 1 Samuel. I tell you what, well, let's do this. If I get somebody that would like to go ahead and get some of these verses, how about somebody do 1 Samuel 1 and 9 and verses 24 and 25? Okay? Excuse me. And if you got it, just say the word if you want to read it. Just listen.
Is it Samuel 1:9, 1 Samuel 1:9?
Yes.
So Hannah rose up after they had eaten in Shiloh, and after they had drunk. Now Eli the priest sat upon a seat by a post of the temple of the Lord.
Okay? Now go down to verses 24 and 25.
And when she had weaned him, she took him up with her, with 3 bullocks and 1 ephah of flour and a bottle of wine, and brought him unto the house of the Lord in Shiloh. And the child was young. And they slew a bullock and brought the child to Eli.
Okay, so we have the scripture there. It states that Eli was the high priest during the time of Hannah and Samuel. This is, of course, the child that she would bring. Okay? Hophni and Phinehas, the wicked sons of Eli, served here. Somebody have 1 Samuel 2:12.
Now the sons of Eli
were sons of Belial, they knew not the Lord.
Okay? These men were of the priestly lineage and worked in the tabernacle with their father. Okay? And you remember what they were guilty of? They were taking sacrifices that were not qualified. Okay? They were letting just about anything pass, and they were doing all kinds of not very nice things right within the area of the tabernacle. Okay? And sons of Belial. This is a term that's used in reference to people who are non-believers. Okay? And basically idol worshipers. Okay? Belial is a false god who has a direct reference to Satan himself. Okay? So these guys were wicked. They were acting as servants of God, but they didn't even know God, as that scripture says. Okay? So Hophni and Phinehas were there. Okay? Samuel was called by God here. If you don't want to read all 10 verses, that's okay. We can just get the gist of it. Somebody have that? Okay.
Samuel 3:1-10.
Uh-huh.
And the child Samuel ministered unto the Lord before Eli, and the word of the Lord was precious in those days. There was no open vision. And it came to pass at that time, when Eli was laid down in his place, and his eyes began to wax dim, that he could not see. And ere the lamp of God went out in the temple of the Lord, where the ark of God was, and Samuel was laid down to sleep, that the Lord called Samuel, and he answered, Here am I. And he ran unto Eli and said, Here am I, for thou calledst me. And he said, I called not, lie down again. And he went and lay down. And the Lord called again Samuel. And Samuel rose and went to Eli and said, Here am I, for thou didst call me. And he answered, I called not, my son, lie down again. Now Samuel did not yet know the Lord, neither was the word of the Lord yet revealed unto him. And the Lord called Samuel again the third time, and he rose and went to Eli and said, Here am I, for thou didst call me. And Eli perceived that the Lord had called the child. Therefore Eli said unto Samuel, Go lie down, and it shall be, if he call thee, that thou shalt say, Speak, Lord, for thy servant heareth. So Samuel went and lay down in his place. And the Lord came and stood and called out at other times, Samuel, Samuel. Then Samuel answered, Speak, for thy servant heareth.
All right, so here we see the calling of Samuel at the tabernacle in Shiloh. Samuel is a very important figure in the Bible. Anybody just off the top of their head give me some things that Samuel was very much a part of? Anybody?
Anointed David.
He anointed David, right, as king of Israel. Anyone else? What were his offices? He had 2 offices. Priest and prophet, right? He was a priest and a prophet. Okay? So Samuel was very, very important at this stage of the game because he was also present when Israel decided they didn't want to follow God anymore. And they wanted to be like other countries. Remember that? And they said, we want a what? We want a king. We want to be like everybody else around us. So God says, all right, I'll give you a king. And he gave him a big, strong, mighty-looking fella that didn't have his head on straight. Okay, his name was Saul. He was a mighty warrior. He was a great warrior. But he was full of himself. Okay? And not so much full of God. So, we move on. We see Eli died here when he heard of his son's death and the capture of the Ark of the Covenant by the Philistines. Anybody have 1 Samuel 4, 16-18? Oh, yes, ma'am.
And the man said unto Eli, I am he that came out of the army, and I fled today out of the army. And he said, What is there done, my son? And the messenger answered and said, Israel is fled before the Philistines, and there hath been also a great slaughter among the people, and thy 2 sons also, Hophni and Phinehas, are dead, and the ark of God is taken. And it came to pass, when he made mention of the ark of God, that he fell from off the seat backward by the side of the gate, and his neck brake, and he died, for he was an old man and heavy, and he had judged Israel 40 years.
Okay. So we see here in this situation, first of all, you just got word that your 2 sons were killed in battle. Eli knew that they were wicked. He did not correct them. He did not tend to them as he should. Probably not completely surprised this would be their end. But on top of that, as the high priest and as the judge, it was the Ark of God was the symbol of who they were. And do you remember what they would do when battle would come? What would be one of the first things that they would do when a battle would rise? Anybody? They'd run and get the Ark, right? And they'd trot that thing out there to the front lines. And they'd be like, you know who you're messing with? Right. That they would know that they are messing with the people who worship the God that dwelleth between the cherubims. Right? And we remember what the dwelling between the cherubims was, right? The Shekinah glory of God when he'd meet at the Day of Atonement with the high priest. Right? So now, the Ark was gone. What are we going to do now? I wonder if it would be like today for a lot of people if their church building was gone. Do you know God has blessed us beyond all imagination with what we have. But if he decides to take it away tomorrow, and Job knows this, if he decides to take it away tomorrow, guess what? We still have church, ain't we? And we can still meet right here on an empty lot and worship him. Okay? Man, and, oh, there went the ark. Well, we know the people who took it, right? Philistines. It wasn't long before they were wishing that somebody else had it. Okay? And we talked about that a little bit as well. But it's believed that the Philistines came in and destroyed the tabernacle at that time. Okay? Also, Phinehas' wife delivered a son and named him Ichabod. Okay? For the glory of the Lord had departed from Israel. And that's what we'll find in verses 1 Samuel 14, 19 through 21. Who has that? Would like to read it? Anybody? That's our last one. You're right there. Yes, ma'am.
And his daughter-in-law, Phinehas' wife, was with child, near to be delivered. And when she heard the tidings that the ark of God was taken, and that her father-in-law and her husband were dead, she bowed herself and travailed, for her pains came upon her. And about the time of her death, the women that stood by her said unto her, Fear not, for thou hast borne a son. But she answered not, neither did she regard it. And she named the child Ichabod, saying, The glory is departed from Israel, because the ark of God was taken, and because of her father-in-law and her husband.
Okay. Now, chances are, with the way Eli was executing his office and the way his sons were acting, Ichabod could have been written above that tabernacle long before this happened. Ichabod means the glory has departed. Okay? And I fear, do I know where they're at? No, not necessarily, but I fear there are a lot of churches in our country and in our world that have that written above the door. It can't be seen by anybody but God, apparently. But Ichabod. Now, she said that because the ark had been stolen. Well, the ark is the place that's where they met with God, right? That's where they met with God. So we see while the tabernacle was in Shiloh, these were some of the major events that took place. By the way, this is what the site looks like today in ancient Shiloh. If you were to look at this picture, where would you guess that maybe the tabernacle was at the time? Tell me when I get on it. Right there? Yeah, that's what's believed, that was the location of the tabernacle, because it fits the dimensions of... and this picture is actually taken standing on a ramp. There is a, I don't know what they call that thing. It's kind of like a theater, but it looks like a big mushroom. And you go up, there's got an elevator and it's got a ramp that goes around and you go and you sit. And you look out these windows, and you can see that, but then they make it dark, and then they show a video on the windows. But this is what you see when you step out of that building. It overlooks to the location of the tabernacle in Shiloh. What significance does this make the Bible any more true? It's not a loaded question. It doesn't, right? It doesn't make the Bible any more true. The Bible's true no matter what. But this does give evidence to the skeptic. And we know that today, people will look facts straight in the face and still say it's not the case. That's the way people are in their minds today. But what does it do for us? That just gives us one more thing to realize that our faith is not in vain. You know, this is true. The Bible will always be shown to be true by true science, true archaeology will always prove the Bible to be true. Okay? That's it. Any questions or comments?